Hi, everyone. My name is Logan Jacqueline, and I'm the manager of enrollment for the Master of Science in Anesthesia program. I first would like to thank you for joining tonight to go over our newest location in Austin, Texas. So I'm going to jump right into the agenda. Tonight we'll give you a profession overview and a program overview. We'll touch on the program history of how Austin came about, and then we'll go into our curriculum. We have two students with us tonight, so they'll talk about their experience, and then we will go over the application process and wrap up with a Q&A. So if you have questions during the presentation or after the presentation, you can use the Q&A feature on your toolbar. Like I said, you can either ask questions during our presentation if those pop up, or wait till the end during our Q&A session. And here are your panelists for our webinar today. We have Ty, who is the program director in Austin, Texas. We have Gina, who is the director of simulation education. We have Teresa, who is the admission specialist in Cleveland and serves our network. We have Jasmine, who is a first-year student in Austin, and we have Matthew, who is also a first-year student in Austin, Texas. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ty to go over what is a CAA.
Great. Thank you, Logan. I appreciate getting everything started. And to all of you that are joining us this evening, thank you for your time and your energy to be here and allow us to share with you a little bit about the certified anesthesiologist profession, and particularly the Master of Science program at Case Western Reserve University. One question we'll often hear is, what is a certified anesthesiologist assistant? CAAs are considered advanced practice professionals, individuals with extensive training. We specialize in the delivery of anesthesia. Other examples of APPs would be physician assistants or nurse practitioners. Certified anesthesiologist assistants, we work alongside the physician anesthesiologist in what is known as the anesthesia care team. And together as a unit, we help create and implement anesthesia care plans. Our time with patients begins from when we first meet them in the pre-op area and or emergency room, if that's the case. And then we will have the continuum of care with them from the pre-op area to the operating room, throughout the surgery, a safe transition from surgery back to the post-operative recovery area, PACU, and then we'll do a transition or a handoff to our recovery nurses. CAAs are certified by the National Commission for the Certification of Anesthesiologist Assistants, and that is who administers and oversees our certification exam upon graduation. Currently, AAs practice in 21 jurisdictions across the country. Some of the newest members to this map are going to be Kansas, Philadelphia, and Utah. The profession of CAA originated, we'll talk a little bit more on this shortly, in Ohio and in Georgia. And that is where the highest concentrations of AAs began, and with just the two training programs. And as you can see from this map, we continue to grow. For the Case Western Reserve University MSA program, there are currently 4 locations. Cleveland was the original location for Case Western, as well as for the MSA program. So the AA profession began their education in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as Atlanta, Georgia. The CASE program is 24 months long. We start in June, and we'll talk a little bit more about the breakdown of each one of those semesters. One thing that is very unique to the CASE MSA program is our early hands-on for clinical training. The first year, it is year-round. It is 6 semesters. There's no breaks for summer. There is a Small break between semesters for about a week or so. But you will go, it is year round. But the summer session, what's unique about the CASE program, the first year focuses on your didactic, learning and understanding the nuances of anesthesia. But Case Western also likes to incorporate early hands-on clinical training as well. So we have what we affectionately term to as our immersion summer or boot camp, because it is pretty hard and fast. And Jasmine and Matt, who are students with me down here, can help share a little bit about what that is like. But things do come pretty fast during the summer, and we need to get everyone up to a certain level of proficiency, if you will, so that we can start introducing you into the clinical world. So about week 6, 7, we will start pairing you up with preceptors, certified anesthesiologist assistants, or anesthesiologists in the area at your rotation sites, and you will begin that summer with hands-on training. Your first week, first couple of days in the operating room will be an awful lot of observation. The clinical instructors will be sharing with you in excruciating detail pretty much everything they're doing. And it will dovetail into a lot of the things that we will have been discussing on campus in the didactic arena as well. And then after that first week, it is hands-on. You will be pre-oxygenating. You will be putting monitors on. You will be starting IVs, intubating patients, and learning all the nuances of anesthesia as early as the second month of training. All MSA programs across the country are accredited by the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs, CAHAB, and underneath CAHAB falls the Accreditation Review Committee for Anesthesiologist Assistants. And all three Case Western programs are accredited, and here in Austin, we are in the middle of our accreditation. So we have our site visit coming up, and we are all very excited about that. So the CASE difference, as I mentioned a little earlier, CASE was one of the first MSA programs in the nation. Case Western has been training anesthesiologist assistants for over 50 years. Our graduates, we'll talk a little bit more about what the job market is, but our graduates are sought after across the country. And although this slide is talking about job offers beginning the fall semester of their second year, Matt and Jasmine, again, are first year students down here in Austin, and they are already being sought after for employment opportunities here in Austin. Case Western has a very long-standing history of not just education, but producing exceptional AAs in various leadership roles. I would say that out of all the AA programs, Case Western has the highest number of graduates that are involved in AA education across the country, and that includes other AA programs. Case has the highest number of political involvement. Our national organization is the American Academy of Anesthesiologist Assistants, and from its inception, Case Western has the highest number of past presidents and executive board members of any program across the country. We have amazing faculty and student mentorship programs. And with us having a 4-campus program, it's not just at one site. So being able to cross-connect from literally all reaches of the US, we're able to kind of help grow, foster, and promote our students. Our graduates complete about 2,100 clinical hours on average, and they will be trained in all specialties of anesthesia, including pediatrics, cardiac, orthopedics, neuro, and regional anesthesia. including OB. Case Western, our network, with its size, we have affiliation agreements with over 80 different hospitals across the country. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that comes into play for the students when we talk about the second year rotations coming up. Okay, what's the job market look like? Because that is the ultimate goal. As prospective applicants, you're wanting to know what it takes to get into the program. And once you do the work to get in, and once you put forth the blood, sweat, and tears to get through the program, what's the payoff on the far side? Currently, right now, the anesthesia market is, as a whole, is having a boom like I have not seen in the 20 years that I've been doing this. Case Western has a nearly 100% job placement rate, as well as 100% certifying exam pass rate. So we are very good at getting our students educated and getting them through the certification exam, as well as providing them opportunities for employment, seeking employment. Starting salaries averaging about 180,000 plus benefits. That I know that right now there are numerous job postings on those benefit sides that on top of that salary, a lot of employers are offering anywhere from 10, 20, 30, I've heard as high as $50,000 or $60,000 sign-on bonuses if you're willing to go work for them for 2, 3, 4 years upon graduation. And at the same time, some employers are beginning to think outside the box about what other kind of opportunities they can offer to put forth to entice new graduates. And I know that they're looking at possible tuition reimbursement or helping with your graduate school cost on those. So this is an unprecedented time in the anesthesia field with the number of job openings that are out there. I know that in some local markets, some of these groups have increased their compensation structure 2 to 3 times already in 1 year, just in order to be competitive with the job market. AAs, I would say, they do have an unparalleled work-life balance. It is a great opportunity. It's a great responsibility to be in there, to work in the operating room, to be taking care of these patients during their most vulnerable times. You will be, as I've already mentioned, incredibly well trained and capable of being in there. And it is a great responsibility. And that's why the salaries are where they are. However, once you are off the clock, out of the operating room, out of the hospital, there is most often someone there to fill that role for you. And by that, I mean that when you're not in the operating room, you don't need to be thinking about the operating room. It allows you to do a handoff to your colleagues and allows you to focus your time and energy with your family when you're not in the operating room. There are surgery and healthcare is not a 8 to 5 job by any means, and surgeries need to take place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays. And so in order to provide those opportunities, there a lot of institutions will offer call. And so that is when you will be in those hospitals and available to provide anesthesia services during off hours or non-routine hours, evenings, weekends, and so forth, holidays. And oftentimes, various anesthesia groups will incentivize that by offering an increase in pay for those. So I know here in Austin, a flexible 40-hour work week, there are some anesthetists that work 3 days a week, some that work 4, some that work 5, some that work evenings, some that work mornings. So some of the larger groups are often able to help incentivize for hiring to be able to provide individuals with a schedule that will most benefit their personal life, their work-life balance. So what's the history of the Case Western MSA program? As I mentioned, the Cleveland program was the very first program. It started in 1970, and it started off as a bachelor's program. The concept for the anesthesiologist assistant was brought about during a previous low shortage time for anesthesiologists. So anesthesiologists, there was a couple pioneers in the anesthesia community who theorized that if we could provide training at a bachelor's level for individuals that were interested in anesthesia, we would be able to help them with that training, with the higher possibility of those individuals going on to become anesthesiologists, right? So once you got your bachelor's as an anesthesiologist assistant, worked as an anesthesiologist assistant, you would already have a leg up in being able to apply to medical school. And then theoretically, you would be more interested in the field of anesthesia. And that has held true. I've known probably 5 or 6 anesthesiologists over my career that started off as AAs. So Cleveland was around for many years. The other program at that time was at Emory University. And then in 2010, after about a year or two of communication between anesthesia groups and anesthesiologists in leadership positions in the Houston, Texas area, they approached Case Western and said, look, we have a need down here for certified anesthesiologist assistants. You have a proven track record of a great educational format and producing exceptional graduates, and we would like to partner up with you. So in 2010, a partnership is made with Case Western Reserve University with the Houston anesthesia community to open up a campus, if you will, an MSA campus in Houston, Texas. And again, during this period, there's a little bit of a lull or the beginning of a downturn in staffing levels. And so that was working so well. The same offer was made by leadership, anesthesia leadership in Washington, D.C., who again approached Case Western and said, hey, we have an amazing opportunity here. We do a wide range of surgeries, and we would like to partner up with Case Western to do what we can to help produce amazing graduates. So in 2010, the Washington, D.C. campus opened up. So a number of years pass, and in 2019, communication started with Case Western and leaders in the Austin area that are involved in anesthesia education. And they approached Case Western and said, hey, we also would like to have some of those graduates available to work with us down here in Austin, Texas. So what was unique about Austin, Texas is its proximity to Houston, Texas. And so in order to begin that process, Case Western Houston was able to allow a few of their students to start doing some clinical-based training rotations here in Austin. Austin at that time was not familiar with educating AAs, and at that time there was also no residency program. So we kind of wanted to see how that was going to work, and it worked very, very well. So well, in fact, that Case Western was approached about opening up a 4th location, standalone training location here in Austin, Texas. So on May 31st of 2022, Matthew and Jasmine and 10 of their, I'm going to say, budding close friends, individuals from all over the country, became the inaugural class for the Case Western Reserve University Master of Science in Anesthesiology program here in Austin, Texas. So right now we are finishing up our 2nd semester with our 1st class. And soon you guys will be able to kind of visit a little bit with Matt and Jasmine and kind of understand what they've been through, where they were, where they are now, and where they're going. It's been a pretty amazing time, and I have been very fortunate to help guide and direct and create opportunities for not just the two that are here tonight, but as well as all of their classmates as we begin to do our training here in Austin, Texas. All right. So here in Austin, we have two primary rotation sites for our first year students. Baylor Scott and White has numerous hospitals here. Right now, our students are doing most of their work at the Baylor Scott and White Round Rock, Texas hospital, which is located about 25 miles north of Austin, and then St. David's Healthcare as well. And St. David's St. David's was just recently named the #1 large group healthcare system in the United States. We currently have 5 St. David's hospitals that our students are rotating through. As St. David's continues to grow, they are looking at, they've already announced plans to build 3 new hospitals, 2 of which will be tertiary care centers that will have operating rooms, and then that 3rd one would be a psychiatric hospital. St. David's Round Rock, which is one of the locations where our students spend their time training, was just last month announced a $53 million expansion, including additional ORs to help handle the amount of volume that they're getting at Round Rock. St. David's North Austin is the St. David's location that's most proximal to our campus, to our school, and it currently is undergoing a massive expansion as well. But what's unique about North Austin is that it is the region's #1 labor and delivery location with approximately 30,000 deliveries per year. So our students are able to be involved in an awful lot of obstetrics and regional training there. We also have St. David's main campus, which is right off of I-35 and just a few blocks from the Texas Capitol building and a block or 2 north of the University of Texas campus. And at that location, it was the original location. It is known for their cardiovascular work, and aside from doing all subspecialties there, they also have a very busy cardiac cath and cardiac ablation facility there. And then South Austin, St. David South Austin is also a busy cardiac location, but also gets a fair amount of traumas because of its proximity to some of the major highways that are going through town. Why Austin? Well, Austin is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. And with the influx of people, you need healthcare to take care of those people. So our healthcare system here in Austin is rapidly growing, and this is an amazing time to be a part of the growth that Austin is experiencing. Why is Austin growing so fast? Well, they are definitely being known now for their tech industry. Apple Industries, Apple Computers, is finishing up the last bit of touches on their 2nd largest campus in the world, second only to the primary campus in California. Elon Musk and Tesla is very active here in Texas, and there's a huge plant that you cannot help but notice when you're flying into Austin on the southeast corner of the city. And a few years ago, and construction should be beginning within the year for a new billion-dollar Samsung facility, which is going to be located about 20 miles east of Pflugerville, which is another one of the Austin suburbs. So the tech bringing in jobs, but also what is great about Austin is its nightlife, which a lot of people know and hear about with their music scene, the food, everything that you hear, and then some. I am from Kansas City. Went to high school in Kansas City and worked in Kansas City for a number of years before coming down here. Die-hard Kansas City barbecue fan until I got to Texas. And Austin definitely knows how to do barbecue. Austin has a very eclectic environment. I love how carefree, how open, how accepting it is. If you're not familiar with the Austin motto, keep Austin weird, weird is accepted down here. And I think that we do what we can to encourage that even in our program. It is just a mix of unique individuals that all come together from across the country and across the world, really, here in Austin. We have a great live music scene. Had the opportunity to take in a concert at the Austin City Limits filming site once, and they just have anybody you want to see is going to be coming through Austin. Austin also has a great network of parks, lakes, bike trails, hiking, boating. Lake Travis, you can be on Lake Travis probably within about 30 minutes. You've got hiking trails all through the city, including the downtown area. You have the Willow Creek hiking and biking area, mountain biking, road biking. It is one of the, then I think the kind of the cherry that goes on top of Austin. Austin is considered the 4th friendliest dog city in the United States. So if you have a dog or you like dogs, dogs are very welcome in Austin. So that kind of tells you a little bit about the flavor and the personality of the people that make up this wonderful city.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ty. I'm going to turn it over to Gina to talk about our curriculum.
Thanks, Logan. So as you guys can see here, this is the actual coursework that we're giving to our students right now. Lays out all of our semesters from summer, fall to spring. We generally laid out in the sense that there are didactic courses, so traditional classroom learning where you're essentially getting a lecture or you're doing some type of presentation with the instructor and you're going through the topics there. We have clinical learning, so some of your classes will be related to some clinical skills we want you to get, such as basic life support or BLS or advanced cardiac life support. And then we have a simulation-based training. In the summer, you'll notice there's less classes. We do that boot camp thing that Ty talked about. It's an immersive anesthesia couple months for you guys who start with us. We know that everyone has a varied background and we really welcome all the diversity we get from our students that apply, but we also realize people have varied experience in healthcare and anesthesia specifically. So that beginning foundation is to really immerse you guys in what anesthesia is and expose you to things that you're going to see often and get you started on those skill sets, as well as learning things about how we monitor patients while they're asleep to keep them safe, general principles of anesthesia, some kind of basic coverage there, and then kind of introducing you to EKGs. How do you read an EKG rhythm or things like that? As we move on throughout the semesters of the first year, we start to really try to pair our didactic work with the simulation lab. So our didactic clinical director is Tasha, and she and I work really closely together to try to make sure things that you're learning within your didactic work and your didactic classes, such as learning about cardiac disease, we try to have some simulations to match those around the same time so that the information you're taking in through a lecture, you're also getting a hands-on experience with simulation. Simulation really becomes the thing that's most unique for most students when they start programs such as this. Simulation is a way to practice and do anesthesia without all the consequences of having a live patient. You get to try things, try procedures such as intubating, placing IVs, placing different types of lines or monitors, and also see what happens when you give a certain medication. How do vitals change for the patient? How do things change? For our simulation labs, we typically try to keep those very small group. And one of the best ways to learn in simulation is to not have too many students, so that every student gets an opportunity to experience the simulation themselves. So we try to keep our groups around 4 to 5 students in each, which means there's multiple simulation sections for the class. For example, our class right now, we have 12, so we have 4 different simulation groups, or 3 different simulation groups throughout the week of 4 students. Those last about 2 hours, and we have one topic we'll cover throughout the week. And then some weeks we're not doing an live simulation with our really high-tech Apollo fake patient simulator man who can do lots of things. He can breathe, you can feel pulses. He's pretty high-tech and advanced. Sometimes we're just doing like a skill set. So our students recently learned spinals and epidural placement. So for like obstetrics, whenever you give a patient numbing medicine to allow them to have a baby, they learned the placement of those techniques. And then as Ty said, we really try to get our students in the OR. So along with your clinical time, you also have a clinical correlation class to go with that. And throughout the time, as we start to build your anesthesia knowledge, we also decrease your overall didactic class load and start introducing you to more days of the week in your OR. So you're going to spend more days. So by fall, we're trying to get you up to 3 days a week every time you go in. And by spring, we're really trying to have you in the OR as much as possible and make that 4 days a week. When it comes to your second year, you won't have as many classes as you see. You still have the clinical, didactic, and simulation coursework, but things really drop off. So you're spending most of your entire day in the OR. So working normal shifts. We like you to kind of experience what kind of different shift models are out there. So when you go to rotations, we want you to work kind of like your clinical instructors do, but also giving you that time to focus on your coursework because you still have a little bit of that. You will be in the OR, you're not leaving the OR. A lot of it's self-study, but there will be things you'll have to come back to campus for example, your senior simulations, or we have a thing we call Thursday afternoon conferences where our senior students present interesting cases that they have, and they talk about them and create a discussion that our junior students listen in on. And then you're really focusing on your specialty rotation. So we're trying to get you to get experience in a lot of areas. As you can see, we have a lot of them listed here, but it can include cardiac anesthesia, which is very unique to itself, intensive care, nerve blocks, when we're putting numbing medicines into patients to help block off certain parts of their body so they can help be pain-free for procedures, such as if you're doing a procedure on the arm. Doing obstetrics, so it's a very unique way that we do anesthesia up there and giving students a full month, and then also pediatrics. And then I think Ty is going to talk to you a little bit about the rotation sites that we have.
Thank you, Gina. Yep. Ty, can you tell us a little bit about the rotations schedule of a second year student?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Gina. And very well summarizing both the first and second year. So the first year is we often consider that your didactic year, and we're really trying to help you focus on the understanding and the science of anesthesia. And then as Gina mentioned, as we're transitioning you into the second year is considered your clinical phase. Your first year, you're going to be getting about 500 patient care hours over the 12 months. And then for your second year, you're going to be getting well over 1,500 clinical hours. So your amount of time in the operating room drastically increases. And although Matt and Jasmine are amazing students and do very well here in Austin, and it has been a very steep learning curve over the first 2 semesters, and the third semester will too, as the didactic wraps up. The learning curve once again goes up exponentially for our second year students. I like to prepare students mentally and emotionally by saying your second year, you are eating, breathing, sleeping anesthesia. It is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And just like Gina had mentioned, we have to rehearse, practice like you're going to play once you graduate. So as a first year student, you're often spending anywhere from 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 hours in the operating room. And then as a second year, because you don't have those requirements to for your didactic courses, you're going to be spending 8, 9, 10, 12, 16-hour shifts in the operating room. And you're kind of building upon that. And one thing that I like for our second year students to do, we'll also start introducing our students to working alongside their preceptors for call shifts, overnight shifts, and learning what it feels like to be able to function safely in the anesthesia world at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're tired and when you're hungry and when patients aren't doing well, being able to think clearly and be able to be an integral part of that care team in the operating room and getting those patients out of that operating room safely. That is something that's important to me for our students to experience under supervision so that they understand what their limits are, what they're capable of before working out. So second year rotations, as Gina said, you're going to be experiencing all subspecialties of anesthesia. This is just a kind of a snapshot of what a second year rotation would look like. So I mentioned about the St. David's hospital system here in Austin. We've got St. David's Medical Center downtown, which I talked about for a neuro rotation. We've also got affiliation agreements with Mercy Hospital in St. Louis for neuro rotations. Baylor Scott and White up in Round Rock is a good place for our students to spend time working just in general surgery. And by general, you could be doing general surgery cases such as laparoscopic gallbladder removal or appendix, but also during that rotation, you're just going to kind of be functioning as a general anesthesiologist assistant, being able to do all types of cases. You could still get some orthopedic cases in, you could still get some pediatric cases in, maybe you're going to do a cardiac case that day, that rotation as well. But Baylor Scott and White is one of those places that just, it's a general rotation and you're going to be asked to do all areas of it. Right now, Dallas Children's is where a lot of our students here in Texas have been doing their rotation. It is a 2-month rotation because of the need for attention to detail in pediatrics. I will say that Texas Children is building a brand new children's hospital in North Austin, and we are working with them to have our students rotate there as second year students. And within the past 6 months, we've been contacted by another pediatric hospital here in Texas that we will most likely be having our students rotate to as well prior to the opening of the location here in Austin. And so if we're talking about all the subspecialties, and then you think, okay, pediatrics, but pediatrics has all the subspecialties also. So our hope is that our students are going to be able to get, our plan is for our students to be getting training in pediatric neuro cases, pediatric orthopedic cases, pediatric cardiovascular cases. And so you'll be comfortable or at least be exposed to all those areas as well. Right now, our plan is for our students to do a month rotating in the intensive care unit. And that right now is set up to happen at University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. And ICUs, just like the ORs, there is no pause button. Things are happening 24 hours a day. So during that ICU rotation, you could be on a week of nights, and then a week of days, and then a week of nights, and then a week of days. We'll bring you back here to Austin, where you'd spend a little bit more time with St. David's doing general surgery cases. More ambulatory surgery cases are more of your healthy adult population. We consider those ASA 1s and 2s, meaning they don't have a whole lot of comorbidities or disease processes that complicate their anesthetic. I already touched on St. David's North Austin and their volume of obstetrics. Mentioned about Round Rock, and their Round Rock is also fairly close to the interstate system and seems to get a fair amount of trauma. It's probably one of the largest medical centers north of Austin. So a lot of the farming communities that are up there, people that are coming in from the outlying areas of Austin, that would be one of their closest locations for them to go to. Again, the trauma, and then right now we've got St. David's earmarked for cardiac rotation, that they do bypass and open heart surgeries at a number of the St. David's centers. So that gives you an idea of what your second year students are going to be going through.
Awesome. Thank you, Ty. Now we'll move on to our student experience. So you'll get to hear from 2 first-year students. We're going to go ahead and start with Jasmine.
Thanks, Logan. Hi, guys. I'm Jasmine. I'm a first year at the Austin location. So my background a little bit, I graduated from UTSA, got the typical biology degree, was planning on going to med school. I always knew I kind of wanted to be an anesthesiologist just because my best friend's dad was one. And so I shadowed him, fell in love with the profession. However, my junior year of college, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do 8 more years of school. So I kind of started looking into like what other options I had. And randomly one day I just went to a TA session for my OChem class, and my TA was telling us how she was studying for the MCAT and planned on applying to Case Western for their MSA program. So I talked to her for like 30 minutes after, found out about the Master's in Anesthesia program at Case Western, did my own research. Kind of just knew then that's the route I wanted to go. So I studied for the MCAT, took the MCAT, was lucky enough to get into the Case Austin location. And I'm very happy with my decision. I love it. And to more just get into like what the actual experience is like, it's definitely a grind. You have to be very dedicated, really good at time management, but I will say it's 100% doable. Case does a very good job at giving you everything you need to succeed. And especially with the Austin program, Ty, Gina, all of our faculty are amazing. They're 100% on your side, do everything to help you succeed. Our preceptors are super helpful and great teachers. Everybody's really patient and understanding with you, and everybody just has your back. So kind of getting into the schedule. So yeah, that first semester, your summer semester, which is your boot camp, is really, it's kind of like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. You're kind of just blasted with a bunch of information and you feel very overwhelmed, which is 100% normal. That's how it's supposed to be. And so your typical week will be in class, normally Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. until 4 or 5 p.m. You go home, you study. Definitely try to manage your time where you at least get 30 minutes to an hour doing something to decompress. If you don't, you can definitely burn yourself out. So that's my big advice there. After that first month or so, you start getting into clinic as well, which mostly just be observational, and it's like once a week, kind of just warming you up into what clinic's gonna be like. What I really like about Case Western is, yes, they do get you into the OR very, very early, which can be uncomfortable and scary. But especially for someone like me, I'm a very hands-on learner. So that has helped me tremendously. And I think that just puts us at a better advantage than most of the other programs. So just a ton of studying that first couple months during your boot camp. Then getting to the fall semester, it's definitely been better. That summer semester is a sprint. This fall semester is more of a marathon. So it's a longer semester, but you're taking more classes. You have more free time, which is really nice. You can kind of take a breath. However, you're having to balance more classes. You're in clinic now 2 to 3 times a week. You're in there for at least 12 hours every time you're there. And so my biggest thing is just time management. I've had to learn what works for me, kind of get into a routine, and also find time for myself, because we always promote mental health, which is why I really like this Austin program. Everybody's here for you with mental health, and taking time for yourself to decompress and take a minute to breathe. And the great thing about this profession is just what they're talking about earlier is the work-life balance. For my preceptors, that's the number one thing they emphasize is, as long as you can grind your way through this really hard program and get through it, it's totally worth it in the end. You end up with a great career. Your work-life balance is amazing. And that's pretty much my experience. I'll give it up to Matt to talk about it a little bit more.
All right, thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, so a little bit about my background. I went to the University of Texas at Dallas. I was also a biology major. And after graduation, I was still pretty unsure of what I wanted to do. I ended up being an EMT for a few years, and I scribed in the emergency room. And basically before I applied to Case Western, I'd also applied to medical school, and I had gotten into both programs. I was really torn between which profession I really wanted to go into. And the biggest thing that I think helps is just shadowing, see what the profession is like. And then another really important aspect to me was also the flexible work weeks that they have, the work-life balance that they really do have. And from my experiences, the preceptors always get out on time and they work extra if they want to. It's not something that's so mandatory. You can basically choose if you want to work 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour shifts. It's pretty nice. The reason why I wanted to apply to the MSA program in Austin was because of my family. I have family around here, but also I wanted to end up working around here, and that has been a really pleasant experience in clinicals. I mean, the boot camp is pretty intensive. It gives you a real big picture view about what anesthesia is like, and you really get to just understand what the big picture view, so that when you do end up in clinic, you understand a little bit about what's going on. And it is very intense. It's nerve-wracking. You're in there a month and a half after you've just started studying anesthesia and you don't feel like you're ready, but your preceptors are really good at what they do, and they've always got your back, and that's a really another amazing thing that I've enjoyed about the Austin program is the faculty. They really genuinely care about your well-being. They'll check up on you, and if you're struggling with something, they're always there to help. And that's been the biggest thing that I couldn't recommend more to the future applicants for applying to the Austin program. But yeah, that's been my experience overall so far.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. We're going to go right into admissions requirements. Teresa, you have the floor.
Thanks, Logan. All right, so admission requirements are that you have a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university, and you'll have to have that completed by the time the program starts. So sometimes one of the big questions that we get is, can I be finishing my degree in April and May and then start the program at the end of May or the beginning of June? And the answer is yes. The prerequisite courses that we require are very similar to most medical schools, and I'll go into those in a little bit. Admission tests are the GRE or the MCAT, either one, and Alta Suite assessments, which are the Casper and the Snapshot. And if you're unfamiliar with either of those, the Casper is an online situational judgment test, and the Snapshot is a one-way interview with standardized questions. And the reason that we use those is to make the application process a little bit more holistic. So we're not just looking at your GPA or your test scores. So I'll go into the prerequisite requirements. Biochemistry, you'll need a semester of that. Biology with lab is 1 year plus labs. Human anatomy with lab is 1 semester, as is human physiology. So we don't require a human physiology lab. A question that we get a lot of times is, can I take a combined human anatomy and physiology with lab course? And the answer is yes. Those are the only 2 courses that we can take combined. 1 year of chemistry with labs, 1 semester of organic chemistry with a lab, but it's preferred that you take 2. It's 1 year of physics with labs, 1 semester of calculus, and 1 semester of advanced statistics, which is always the sticky point. So if you have questions about that, just throw those in the chat and I can answer those. And then English with expository writing. I'm going fast, sorry to everybody. So the timeline with the application process. The application is open for the cycle in March. So for example, the application cycle that we are in right now opened in March. So people have been applying since then. The early decision deadline was October 1st. And I can tell you that the best thing that you can do is apply by that early decision deadline. It's okay if your classes aren't complete, as long as they are complete by the beginning of our program, which is the end of May, beginning of June. It gives you a lot of time to finish things. And if there's anything that you need to do to bolster or strengthen your application, you have time to do it. So even if you feel that you're not ready, still apply by that October 1 deadline. Interviews this year started, I think, at the end of August, but September through February are generally when the sites will have their virtual interviews, and they are via Zoom, so you don't have to travel to the sites for that. Coming up soon is our regular decision deadline. That's February 1st. And then February, after that February 1st deadline into March is when the admissions committee makes their final decisions and everyone is notified of their status. And again, as we mentioned several times, classes begin at the end of May. All right, the next slide. These are average scores of our class that is our first years right now. So on average, across all 4 sites, GPA was 3.6, overall GPA. Prerequisite GPA, that's the science GPA, was a 3.6. Average MCAT was a 502. And average GRE, the numbers are on there, but those are about the 60th percentile. So you want to be as close to those numbers as possible to be competitive. Because as Ty mentioned earlier in the webinar, this profession is exploding and we are getting applicants, high numbers of applicants, high numbers of awesome applicants. So do your best to get as close to those numbers as you possibly can. Okay, student body profile. This again are our first year students who are in the program right now. You can kind of see where most of them came from. As Jasmine and Matt mentioned, I think they were both biology majors. The majority of our applicants are biology majors. Others have medical degrees, something adjacent to that, biochemistry and chemistry, etc. If you're not one of those majors, don't feel left out. The other category includes majors such as biomedical engineering, math, physics, economics, linguistics, environmental science, music education. So kind of all over the place. So as long as you meet those prerequisites, you will be okay. All right, I went through that seriously fast so that we had time for questions and answers.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Teresa. So we have about 5 minutes for questions. We'll have our panelists in the chat answer your questions, but I'm going to ask a couple round robin. I'm going to start with Ty. So we did have a question about while you're in the program, if you're struggling, you're on the course to failing, what are some things that the program does to help you avoid that?
That's a great question, Logan, and one that I think that students need to understand going into it. And we monitor the student progress from my position as program director, I'm watching the students on a daily basis. When they are in the operating room, they get evaluated daily, and I review every one of those evaluations that comes in, looking for comments, looking for trends, talking with the simulation and didactic instructors to see how they're doing on their exams, having our students meet with the instructors. So we like to get a lot of face time and to be able to check in with our students and see how they're doing. Even though our campus is located here in Austin, Texas, we have access to everything that every case student has across the country. So our students are able to reach out for any type of counseling service, whether it be emotional or test taking, anxiety struggles. There is somebody within Case Western that is available to them to reach out to. We are monitoring their progress academically and didactically, but we're also taking into account any extenuating circumstances that students might have as well. And then working with students. One thing that I really appreciate about the Case way of approaching this is that if the extra time is needed, the extra time is granted. So if our students are struggling with something in the simulator, Gina is very good about opening up simulation for additional time, or talking one-on-one and walking through whatever the steps are for whichever procedure they're talking about. Tasha is available as well for the didactic classes that she's teaching. And then Tim Goodrich, who is our clinical director, and myself, we're available for anything that has to do with their clinical side of things.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm going to turn this question over to one of our current students. So either Jasmine or Matt, you can jump in. Is there time for you to keep up with your personal hobbies? We have one student asking about being involved in activities outside of the MSA program, if there's time for that.
So your summer semester, like I was saying earlier, you basically don't have time for much just because it's such a fast pace. You probably have 30 minutes to an hour every day to yourself. But this fall semester, I definitely have a lot more free time, and I even have a couple weekends where I can go visit family or see friends. So there's definitely an opportunity to, you just have to be very good at your time management.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that as well. During the summer, it's very intensive, and you probably have about an hour every day to yourself. But after that, there is definitely time if you make it a priority and you plan it out. This program will really get you to plan your time out well if you don't have that down now.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We have time for one more question. We have one question about shadowing a CAI affiliated with Case Western Austin. Ty, are there any opportunities for that? Would they just reach out via email?
Yes, so they can reach out to me via email. The requirements to allow individuals into the operating room, as everyone can imagine, have changed over the course of the last 3 years. When COVID hit, a lot of institutions would no longer allow individuals to just come in and observe in the operating theater for fear of contamination, if you will. So there are more hoops to jump through, if you will, and the process to getting you in the OR takes a little bit longer with more documentation. So with some patience, we used to be able to do an overnight turnaround time. You call me today, I'll put you in the OR tomorrow. Now it usually takes a couple of weeks, as well as documentation, vaccinations, and so forth. So yes, we can do it, but we are asking for a little bit of patience, and sometimes it takes a little time before we can get you in there.
All right, awesome. So a little bit of planning involved. As you see on the screen, there is the email. So you can email any other questions. We're at that our ending time. So like I said, email us with any lingering questions. You can also visit us online. We have a lot of information on there. So if you do have a question or just want to investigate a little bit more about our program, please go to our website. And also follow us on our social media platforms. Right now we're doing a leadership series, so you'll be able to read a little bit about each of our student leaders from each of our programs. And once again, thank you guys so much for for joining us tonight. And I'll end there.